This video explores the story of the video game Maid of Sker, including its ending. If you haven't played it, I recommend you do so before watching. Since at least 1800 in Wales, the time between Christmas and Twelfth Night on the 5th of January has involved the strong possibility of getting into a bawdy rap battle with the skull of a horse. The Mari Lwyd is quite literally the skull of a horse, attached to a pole and decorated with streamers, lights and baubles. A cloak over the skull conceals the person puppeteering the skull, snapping its jaw and generally acting mischievous. Traditionally, the Mari Lwyd would be taken around a village along with other characters such as jesters, and when it arrives at a house, there would be an exchange of rude rhymes with the person who lives there. A lot of the pantomime of the Mari Lwyd is connected to the working class mummers plays of the 18th century, while one English translation of its name, Grey Mare, connects it to the pale horses of Celtic mythology who could pass into the underworld. Though the tradition faded by the 1960s, faced with condemnation from the church, it has seen a more recent revival alongside the Welsh language, itself previously the subject of active suppression by English law. There's something uniquely Welsh in all of this, a defiant joy in the face of darkness, whether the bleak conditions of the Industrial Revolution or the literal and spiritual darkness of midwinter. And of course, the connective tissue for it all is song. Wales is the land of song, and this is why the core of a survival horror game set in West Wales had to be music. Which brings us to Wales Interactive's underrated 2020 gem, Maid of Sker. Set in a fictionalised version of Sker in West Wales in 1898, it tells the story of Thomas Evans, a composer who travels to Sker Hotel in the hopes of rescuing his lover, Elisabeth Williams, from her nefarious father and uncle. As we arrive at the Sker Hotel, we know nothing beyond that Elisabeth needs our help and that it involves our skill as composer. The first item in our inventory as the game starts is a music sheet. Thomas is part of a counter-song, which is apparently crucial in undoing whatever malevolence Isaac and his brother Abraham are up to. As we explore, we discover that the Williams brothers are schemers and robbers, who turned Sker House into a hotel so that they could murder and rob the guests. To do so, they used a variety of devices extremely reminiscent of the American serial killer Henry H Holmes and his infamous murder hotel. In fact, Holmes was executed in real life just 3 years before our story takes place. And when being pursued by Abraham in the later stages of the game, players may well notice the striking resemblance in dress between the brute hot on their heels and Holmes. But Sker's past use as a murder hotel is not the focal point of this story, and H. Holmes is relatively minor when it comes to figures and events that have inspired this story. The other thing that Thomas discovers while exploring Sker Hotel, besides the Williams brothers' grisly past, is that they now control a cult known as the Quiet Ones. So called because their acolytes, transformed by some supernatural malaise, cannot see and do not speak, able only to seek out and respond to the sound of others. This is the central gameplay hook of Maid of Sker. Making too much noise, either by running about, or by not holding your breath in smoky areas in order to prevent yourself from coughing, will have the Quiet Ones advancing upon your location to dispose of you. So, at least until we get a weapon later on called a phonic modulator, stealth is preferable as we explore the many rooms of Sker Hotel, hoping to find all parts of the counter-song. The reason that we need this is because Isaac and Abraham had previously happened upon a shipwreck, within which they found a captured Siren. Their plan was to harness the creature's power for their own ends, with Elisabeth's mother, a renowned singer, doing this while serving as priestess for the cult. With her death, Isaac wanted Elisabeth to take on her role, and locked her away when she refused to be part of their scheme. Which of course brings us back to the central point of Thomas's journey, to rescue Elisabeth and counter the Siren song. Whilst his past and brother are fictionalised through the inspiration of H Holmes, Isaac Williams was a real person, as was his daughter Elisabeth, with whom the harpist Thomas Evans fell in love. The time period is a little off. Isaac Williams owned Sker House between 1727 and 1766. He had 2 daughters, the youngest of whom was a renowned beauty called Elisabeth, who loved to dance. Her best opportunity to do so being the annual Gwyl Mab Sant, Welsh for Feast of the Patron. This is a traditional festival held in honour of the patron saint of a parish. It would involve activities including cockfighting, grinning matches for old women, a team sport called bando, which was somewhat like hockey, and dancing. It was traditional for a harpist to be brought in during the Mab Sant to play so that younger members of the community could dance until dawn. This is where Thomas Evans comes in. The legend goes that Thomas fell in love with Elisabeth through her dancing, and the pair had become lovers by the time the sun rose in the morning. This made her father Isaac furious, as Thomas was far below Elisabeth's station, and so he banned the match. Undeterred, Thomas hired a horse and carriage and rode out to Sker House at night in the hopes of persuading Elisabeth to elope with him. Unfortunately, in doing so he woke the dogs, who started barking and alerted Isaac to what was happening. In response, he kept Elisabeth a prisoner in her own room until she was married to a more fitting suitor, a Mr. Kerkhouse of Neath. Even then, Elisabeth would meet Thomas in secret whenever there was a local Mab Sant, even once being caught by her husband. These secret trysts were not enough to sustain her, and she is said to have died from a broken heart in 1776. As a result of his own pining, Thomas would not take a wife until he turned 50, eventually dying in 1819. In this original folktale, there is of course little resemblance to the version in the game, beyond that Thomas has come to rescue his imprisoned love. But, as we said at the beginning of this video, there is something uniquely Welsh in that melding of class antagonism, as represented by the folktale of the Lord of the Manor thinking the lowly harpist not good enough for his daughter, and mythological intrigue. Here, Isaac Williams is a more actively malevolent force, locking up his daughter not just out of patriarchal misogyny and a sense of upper-class superiority, but also because he views her as a mere tool to expand his control and thus his wealth. The other story with the title The Maid of Sker appears entirely disconnected not only from the game but also the folklore. This is the novel by R.D. Blackmore, written in 1872. In this version, an old fisherman discovers a young girl called Bardi, washed ashore before a major storm, and gives her up for adoption to a wealthy household. Through the course of the novel, the fisherman keeps tabs on the girl because he thinks their fortunes are bound together, and seeks to unravel the mystery of where she came from. She is not a commoner, as is clear from her mannerisms, and it transpires that she may have been the victim of a plot by a younger brother from a wealthy Devonshire family to remove his older brother's heirs, aided by a crafty parson. As disconnected as this may seem from the game and its source material, we can see here how even this version of the story had influence. In the novel, the rich brothers are at odds in their scheming rather than allies, and the discovery of the shipwreck provides the key to unravelling the plot rather than to making it work. But regardless, these elements provide a superficial level of commonality between the book and the game. But it's what the fisherman finds in the shipwreck, the foundling child Bardi, that really gives us our jumping off point. Rather than a child, the creature in the game is a siren, not mermaid-like, as in later depictions of the myth, but as a human-headed bird, true to the earlier depictions of the creatures as far back as the 7th century BCE. There is an analogue to the siren in Welsh and Celtic mythology, in the form of the Morgan, and there is a tale from Western Somerset called The Sea Morgan's Baby, in which a fisherman adopts an infant Morgan. This gives us a more direct link between the Maid of Sker the novel and Maid of Sker the video game, whilst at the same time using the more familiar Greek siren strengthens the thematic connection between the various tales of the same name, concerned as they are with men, their control over women, and how that connects to their designs on power and or status. Sirens are the archetype of the trope that women with a voice, with agency over their own beauty and sexuality, are a danger to men. The lustful men who hear the siren's song have no control over their own actions, diving into the sea and drowning in their eagerness to reach these beautiful creatures. And while, in the Odyssey, it was Odysseus who had to be constrained, bound to the ship's mast until the song was out of earshot, in more ordinary circumstances, it's women who need to be contained and controlled. For their own safety, and to prevent otherwise innocent men being gripped by madness and passion. We might recognise this today as a common victim-blaming trope used by abusive men, who insist they simply couldn't help themselves, driven to their crimes by the women on the receiving end. It's from this patriarchal, misogynistic notion that men are helpless to control themselves around beautiful women, or, God forbid, women with agency, that we get the phrase, "lock up your daughters," which, of course, Isaac Williams did with Elisabeth, because of her love for Thomas Evans and, in the game, her refusal to be directed by him in his scheme for power. He seeks to have control over both his daughter's song and the siren's song, caging both and rejecting the idea of them as autonomous beings. It can also be no accident that all of the quiet ones we encounter in the game are men. Some of these men were already devout acolytes. Some of these men were already devout acolytes of Isaac and the control he sought to enforce. Others were not, yet became agents of his system whether they wished it or not. As with patriarchy, two things held Isaac's control in place: silence and violence. So, when we get a weapon to resist, it is fitting that it's not a gun or a phonic modulator, a device that harms the quiet ones with the very voice they seek to silence. There are two endings to Maid of Sker. In the bad ending, Elisabeth is revealed to be under her father's thrall and takes the siren's power, while Thomas is put in his proper place, subservient to his betters. The quiet ones kill the siren, and its song is snuffed from the world, replaced with a darker song built on order imposed through iron will. Patriarchal and class domination winning out. In the good ending, Thomas plays the counter song and neutralizes the quiet ones. The siren is set free, an innocent creature which only did harm when chained to the will of man. In defiance of Isaac's will, both in the game and the original folktale, Thomas and Elisabeth's love endures and they remain together. Love breaks down class barriers, and both women in the tale, human and supernatural, are allowed to sing freely. As has already been mentioned, Wales is the land of song. From the Eisteddfod, a festival of poetry and music which dates back to the 12th century, and Welsh choirs which can be found in Welsh diaspora across the world, to the working class music of the mining towns, which led to American singer and activist Paul Robeson forging strong links with Welsh miners. They sing in joy and sorrow, longing and defiance alike. And it's no coincidence that the suppression of the Welsh language and of Welsh music, and their subsequent revivals, go hand in hand. So, if we are to give Thomas Evans and Elisabeth Williams a happy ending, throwing open the cage her father and society sought to lock her in, and to push back those who in their silence and compliance enforced the unyielding social norms they had to endure, what better way to do it than through song? If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like. My plan is to put out new videos talking about horror stories and video games at least once a month. So please do consider subscribing to keep up to date and make sure you don't miss out. You can get early access to future videos on both this and my other channel by joining my Patreon for as little as £1 a month. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.